I swear it's not.
Jaden said he shot 4,000.
200, you keep shooting, we're gonna do that again now because you keep talking about stuff. Thankfully,
How do you pick the one photo out of 4,000?
thankfully, I'm shooting the rest of the camera, well, and the editors.
Well,
That makes a lot.
Oh, man.
How about the other, will it spin the other way?
I don't know.
I think it goes the other way, doesn't it?
No.
It's hitting the lights. It's hitting the lights that are sticking up.
Is it?
On the back side, I think, the row of lights.
Briefing will begin.
See the row of lights at the bottom? The bottom. Is it hitting those? I don't know.
They're going the other way. Nope. Try jamming it. Using the-
Six.
Goes good. My mom used to say, don't force it. Whatever.
It is those lights along the bottom.
It is.
The edge.
Yeah, somebody set a remote there, didn't readjust them. Brenner? Where's the presidential flag?
Not out today.
Oh,
Fix it, fix the glass, fix the glass. The glass to the right.
I will, I will.
That ain't doing good.
Let's drop back a little bit. Presence of room. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. So, America continues to wage all-out war to defeat the virus, this horrible, horrible virus. You see how terrible it is, especially when you look at the numbers from yesterday. And we explained why we're extending our nationwide guidelines to slow the spread. 30 days. Together we have the power to save countless lives. We are attacking the virus on every front with social distancing, economic support for our workers, rapid medical intervention, and very serious innovation, and banning dangerous foreign travel that threatens the health of our people. And we did that early, far earlier than anyone would have thought, and way ahead of anybody else. In this time of need, I know that every American will do their patriotic duty and help us to achieve a total victory. As governments and nations focus on the coronavirus, there's a growing threat that cartels, criminals, terrorists, and other malign actors will try to exploit the situation for their own gain, and we must not let that happen. We will never let that happen. Today, the United States is launching enhanced counter-narcotics operations in the Western Hemisphere to protect the American people from the deadly scourge of illegal narcotics. We must not let the drug cartels exploit the pandemic to threaten American lives. In cooperation with the 22 partner nations, U.S. Southern Command will increase surveillance, disruption, and seizures of drug shipments and provide additional support for eradication efforts, which are going on right now at a record pace. We're deploying additional Navy destroyers, combat ships, aircraft and helicopters, Coast Guard cutters, and Air Force surveillance aircraft, doubling our capabilities in the region. Very importantly, our forces are fully equipped with personnel, protective equipment, and we've taken additional safety measures to ensure our troops remain healthy. Secretary Mark Esper, Attorney General Bill Barr, National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien will provide more details. In addition, I'm going to have General Milley, who's done an incredible job in so many ways, say a few words. And also with us, our Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Gilday, who you know, I think you know, and Commandant of the Coast Guard, Admiral Schultz. So I'm going to ask Mark to start, and then we can go. And after that, we're going to take questions as it pertains to this, and then we'll go on to phase 2, which is the virus itself. Okay? Thank you. Please, Mark.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today as we make this very important announcement. At a time when the nation and the Department of Defense are focused on protecting the American people from the spread of the coronavirus, we also remain vigilant to the many other threats our country faces. Today, at the President's direction, the Department of Defense, in close cooperation with our interagency partners, began enhanced counter-narcotics operations in the Eastern Pacific Ocean and the Caribbean Sea. This initiative is part of the administration's whole-of-government approach to combating the flow of illicit drugs into the United States and protecting the American people from their scourge. I want to thank all of our partners in this effort, to include the United States Coast Guard, the Department of Homeland Security, the Drug Enforcement Agency, the Department of Justice, and members of the intelligence community for their tremendous support and cooperation. To conduct these enhanced operations, the President has directed the deployment of additional ships, aircraft, and security forces to the United States Southern Command area of responsibility. Included in this force package are Navy destroyers and littoral combat ships, Coast Guard cutters, P-8 patrol aircraft, and elements of an Army Security Force Assistance Brigade. These additional forces will nearly double our capacity to conduct counter-narcotics operations in the region. Additionally, 22 partner nations have joined us in this fight, bringing with them a variety of intelligence and operations capabilities needed to defeat these criminal organizations. Last year alone, United States Southern Command's operations resulted in the seizure of over 280 metric tons of drugs, much of which was designated for shipment to America. While this was an incredible achievement, there is much more work to be done. Transnational criminal organizations continue to threaten our security by smuggling cocaine, fentanyl, methamphetamines, and other narcotics across our borders. These drug traffickers put our communities at risk and destroy lives. Every year, tens of thousands of Americans die from drug overdose, and thousands more suffer the harmful effects of addiction. Furthermore, corrupt actors like the illegitimate Maduro regime in Venezuela rely on the profits derived from the sale of narcotics to maintain their oppressive hold on power. The Venezuelan people continue to suffer tremendously due to Maduro's criminal control over the country. Drug traffickers are seizing on this lawlessness by increasing their illicit activities. We must do more to prevent these drugs from arriving at our shores. These enhanced counter-narcotics operations that are now underway will further disrupt the flow of illicit drugs to America, deny our adversaries the financial resources they depend on, and build the capacity of our partner nations throughout the region. I want to thank President Trump for his leadership and support to this critical mission. This is a particularly important time for this operation to begin. As nations around the world shift their focus inward to deal with the coronavirus pandemic, many criminal organizations are attempting to capitalize on this crisis. The enhanced operations we are announcing today will keep the pressure on these criminal groups and protect the American people from the devastation caused by the flow of illegal drugs into our country. Mr. President, thank you for your leadership as we begin this important operation. While the men and women of the United States military work hard here at home to fight the coronavirus, we continue to take action around the world to defend our great country. Thank you, and I'd like to invite General Milley.
Thank you, Secretary, for those words, and thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership. And I want to publicly thank Admiral Craig Fowler, the commander of U.S. Southern Command out of Miami, for leading this operation, which is underway effective today, and also Admiral Gilday, the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Schultz, for their contributions to this from their services. There's thousands of sailors, Coast Guardsmen, soldiers, airmen, Marines involved in this operation. We came upon some intelligence some time ago that the drug cartels, as a result of COVID-19, were going to try to take advantage of the situation and try to infiltrate additional drugs into our country. As we know, there's 70,000 Americans die on an average annual basis to drugs. That's unacceptable. We're at war with COVID-19, we're at war with terrorists, and we are at war with the drug cartels as well. This is the United States military. You will not penetrate this country. You will not get past Jump Street. You're not going to come in here and kill additional Americans. And we will marshal whatever assets are required to prevent your entry into this country to kill Americans. So right now the Navy has marshaled additional Gray Hull ships from both PACOM and EUCOM and for the Naval Fleet at Norfolk. And they are set sail already, and they are in the Caribbean right now. In addition to that, there's 10 Coast Guard cutters, and there's Special Operations Forces and Security Force Assistance Brigades, along with Air Force reconnaissance aircraft. The bottom line is you're not going to get through. Now is not the time to try to penetrate the United States with illegal drugs to kill Americans. With the United States military, we will defend our country regardless of the cost. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks for your decisive leadership as we confront this unprecedented challenge posed by coronavirus. And I'd like to thank you for your support for this important initiative, and thank all of the Secretary of Defense and all the services for taking on this important initiative. Obviously, during this crisis, we're all focused above all else on COVID-19. But at the same time, our law enforcement and national security work must go forward, protecting the American people from the full array of threats. For the Department of Justice, one of our highest priorities must remain destroying the Mexican cartels. Their trafficking is largely responsible for the deaths, as we all know now, of 70,000 Americans a year. And also the costs of this don't count the destroyed families, the destroyed lives, the draining of our national treasure as state budgets are crushed by the burden that this narcotic trafficking causes. The President has made clear that we are in this fight against the cartels to win, and that we are not interested in half measures, and that the threat posed by the cartel is not just a law enforcement threat, but a national security threat as well. And in December, building on your success with the Mexican president in forging a cooperative relationship in the area of immigration, you asked me to go down and meet with the President, Lopez Obrador, and our Mexican counterparts to see if we could also establish a more comprehensive and coordinated effort with the Mexicans in confronting the cartels. And we've had some successful visits and discussions, and currently have an array of activities underway against the cartels. And we anticipate, along with the Mexicans, that these are going to bear fruit in the months ahead. But it quickly became clear that we can obtain the most immediate results, the best bang for the buck, where we increase the assets involved in interdiction on both the Pacific and Atlantic side of Mexico and the Central American countries. For years, the cartels have been using these sea routes to take the cocaine up from principally Colombia, now also out of Venezuela. And these sea routes on both coasts have become the primary means of bringing cocaine up to the United States. Because of the superb work done by the Defense Department and our intelligence community, we know exactly, most of the time, where these traffickers are at sea. But have been up till now, significantly limited in our ability to interdict because of the numbers of the assets we have deployed. Prior today, this limitation meant we could only intercept a fraction of the traffickers and the various boats that were detected. This will now double our capacity, and we are talking about hundreds of tons of cocaine now we're now in a position to seize. So this is going to radically improve our interdiction efforts and put tremendous pressure, we think, on the cartels. And the effort that Southcom is undertaking is going to save lives by taking drugs off the street. Last week, I announced the unsealing of charges of narco-terrorism, drug trafficking, and other crimes against the former Maduro regime, 16 members of that regime, and their involvement in trafficking of 250 metric tons a year. A lot of that comes by sea, as I discussed at that time, but also because of the pressure we're applying by our sea interdiction, they are trying to establish an air route out of Venezuela up into Central America, which is one of the reasons we're trying to move firmly against that corrupt regime. This drug war has gone on for many decades, and at times in the past, we've had great success and great results, and at times we've taken our eye off the ball. Fortunately, not in this administration, and I'm grateful that you, Mr. President, have brought focus to this fight and the determination to use whatever tools are necessary to win the fight. The cartels have to be defeated, both for the people of this country and for the people of Mexico and Venezuela. So I'd like to thank you again, Mr. President, Secretary Esper, for providing the wherewithal required to help win this war against the cartels and others who seek to send illicit drugs into our country. And with that, I'd like to introduce Ambassador O'Brien.
Thank you, General. Thank you, Mr. President. Today's action is another example of the bold leadership of President Trump and his commitment to protecting the homeland against threats that seek to destabilize the United States and our Western Hemisphere. The uncontrolled flow of illegal drugs into the United States poisons our communities, fuels the dangerous epidemic of addiction, and threatens the safety and security of all Americans. The impressive U.S. Navy, Coast Guard, Army, Marine Corps, Air Force, and interagency operation will address a range of threats to our national security posed by narco-traffickers and narco-terrorists. It will reduce illicit financial support for drug trafficking that provides the corrupt Maduro regime in Venezuela and other bad actors with the funds necessary to conduct their malign activities. Under President Trump's leadership, we will continue to execute our maximum pressure policy to counter the Maduro regime's malign activities, including drug trafficking. And this operation will help to choke off the funds that go to that corrupt regime. Maduro, narco-terrorists, and criminals should make no mistake that even as we are working around the clock to fight the spread of coronavirus, we will continue to execute the President's counter-narcotic strategy. We are working on a number of important national security priorities as we face this public health crisis. The United States will continue to combat disinformation and fake news about this virus. We will work with the world's largest oil producers to address volatility in global oil markets. We will always protect our servicemen and servicewomen, around the world, including in Iraq and Afghanistan. I want the American people to know that President Trump and Vice President Pence and their administration are working tirelessly every day to protect the health and well-being of Americans and respond to the coronavirus. Our adversaries should take note, however, this president has a clear-eyed focus on America's national security interest. And let me be clear, it would be a mistake with terrible consequences for any adversary to attempt to do us harm during this health crisis or ever for that matter. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay. So do we have any questions on this? Because this group is going to go back to work. We're going to leave. John?
Question either for you, Mr. President, or Secretary Esper. What has changed that is allowing these assets to be deployed now, whereas General Barr said in the past they were not available?
Well, for a long time, we've had a lot of drugs coming into our country, and it's not that it's increased. We've probably got it down a little bit, but it's still a tremendous number. Families are being ruined, lives are being ruined. It's an incredible thing, especially as you're at this position. You would never believe it. I see things that nobody would believe. I see reports that nobody would believe. So I met with the group behind me, all of them, and we said, what do you think we can do? And they think they can interdict. They think that we can stop it before it gets to the shores. And they're coming from all over the place. And we have incredibly talented people. So I think I'm going to let Mark just give them a little bit of an answer to that. But we just want to see if we can stop a good percentage of the drugs coming into our country.
Sure thing. Thanks, Mr. President. So first of all, it's simply a matter of prioritization. The President's given us very clear guidance on what's important to him and protecting the American people. And as some of you know, I began a review months ago looking at all of our different geographic combatant commands and looking at where we can free up time, money, and resources to put into other endeavors. In this case, we had scrutinized our inventory fairly closely. The Chairman Milley did a great deal of work on this with Admiral Gilday, and we felt that there was no risk to the fleet, to our operations, to free up, in this case, naval ships. We also freed up aircraft and other assets to apply them to this presidential priority. And, of course, the Coast Guard did the same. So it was a very good operation. We feel this is very important to the American people and completely in line with the President's direction.
And how long will you be able to keep up this operational tempo?
Well, it depends. What we're going to do is we're going to run it for some matter of time. I'm not going to disclose how long that will be, and then we will assess it. And then we'll make adjustments from there. We may increase, we may decrease, we may sustain as is. But this will be an assessment we will do as an interagency team. We'll report back to the President, and we'll take further guidance from there.
And, you know, we didn't do it for this reason, but it'll also have an impact on the virus because we have people trying to get in. So not only drugs, but now we have a new phenomena, and that's at least for the next, hopefully, short period of time, the virus. So we'll be able to have an impact on that, too. Please.
Yeah, Mr. President, could you expand on that a little bit? Because you tie it to COVID-19, saying that these drug cartels were taking advantage of the situation, of this pandemic. How exactly?
Well, because we're focused on so many other parts of the country and even parts of the world. And all of a sudden, areas where we had it clamped down pretty tight. In fairness, you know, the wall is up to about 160 miles already. And any areas where we have that wall, it's for the most part contiguous. We have fill-ins, but we're up to 161 miles exactly. And any place where you have that wall, other than walking around it on the edges, it's stopping everybody cold. I mean, we're stopping. Nobody's seen anything like it. That's how good it works. And the other side knew it worked that well, everybody, because everybody was for it 5 years ago. All of a sudden, they changed. It's having a tremendous impact. But we are now focused on so many different things because of what's happened, because of this horrible, I say it's a horrible phenomena, that now we've got to focus on drugs. And the drugs come in from different methods, and we have the best people at sea anywhere in the world. So we'll have a tremendous impact on drugs. But one of the other things will also have an impact, we think, on the virus. Okay? Yeah, please.
Ambassador O'Brien, did China underreport both the number of cases and the death toll from the coronavirus? And if that's the case, Mr. President, what does that mean for our relationship with China and your relationship with President Xi?
Well, number one, I think the President has a great relationship with President Xi, and we'd like to have a great relationship with China. Unfortunately, we're just not in a position to confirm any of the numbers that are coming out of China. There's no way to confirm any of those numbers. There's lots of public reporting on whether the numbers are too low. You've got access to those reports that are coming out of Chinese social media, and and some of the few reporters that are left in China, we just have no way to confirm any of those numbers. Thank you.
We really don't know. How do we know whether they underreported or reported however they report? But we had a great call the other night. We're working together on a lot of different things, including trade. They're buying a lot. They're spending a lot of money. They're giving it to our farmers. They're paying our farmers for the product. So, we're gonna continue that along. John, yeah?
I have another one, sir. You tweeted earlier today that there was, you have uncovered intelligence that there is a sneak attack being planned against American troops, American assets in Iraq. Are we talking about Kataib Hezbollah again?
We
Also,
don't
you're
want to say,
saying,
but we just have information that they were planning something, and it's very good information. It was led by Iran, not necessarily Iran, but by groups supported by Iran, but that to me is Iran. And we're just saying, don't do it. Don't do it. It'd be a very bad thing for them if they did it.
the last time they did do it in early March at Camp Taji, there was a response from the military against Kataib Hezbollah, and Kataib Hezbollah alone